Good evening, everyone. I'd like to start by welcoming you all to the Non-Strategic Planning Committee on the 19th of May. I'll start with item 1, which is apologies for absence and notification of substitute members.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Rebecca Rees, Councillor Stephen Clark, Councillor Nick Humphries, Councillor Catherine Shaw, Councillor David Tarver. We have three substitutes, Councillor Graham Frost for the Conservative Group, Councillor John Harris for the Liberal Democrats, and Councillor Sally Keane for the Labour Group. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Item 2,
declarations of interest. Do any members of the committee have any declarations of interest in any of the items under consideration at this committee? Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, non-procuring interest in item 7. I'll be reserving my right to speak and ask questions, but I will not take part in any decisions withdrawn from any votes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor
kept it with us and let the other ward members deal with the interactions.
Okay, thank you. Any
further declarations of interest?
No. Okay,
moving on. Item 3, the minutes. To confirm the minutes of the meeting, the committee held on the 7th of May as the correct record.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much. Item 4. Members of the public are permitted to film, broadcast and report on the meeting subject to the official running of the meeting not being affected. Only those people who have registered in line with the committee's speaking procedure may address the committee. Members of the public are requested not to call out during the committee's discussion on any item. Anybody who repeatedly disrupts the meeting may be asked to leave. All speakers will have 5 minutes in which to make their statements, except where the Chair's discretion has been applied, and are asked to remain seated after they have addressed the committee to answer any questions the committee may have. This meeting is being webcast on the Council's corporate YouTube channel. Therefore, when speaking, please speak clearly and concisely into your microphone. There are no
planned fire drills, so if the alarm does sound, evacuation instructions will be given by democratic services. Please ensure that any devices are switched off or on silent mode. For the benefit of the public watching remotely, I will now introduce the top table, starting at my furthest right.
Thanks, Chairman. My name is Owen Doyle, Team Manager in Development Management.
I'm
Councillor John East, I'm Chair of the Committee.
Richard Woods,
Practice Service Officer
for the Council.
Moving on to item 5,
proposed pre-committee site visits. There are no site visits ahead of the next meeting.
The committee on the 4th of June. We now move
to item 6, which is the Man's Northwest Church News Pittsford. We'll now hand over to the case officer on the buildings to give the presentation.
Thank you, Chair.
So good evening. This application is for a single dwelling, associated outbuildings, landscaping and access on land outside East Confines in Pittsford. The application has been submitted on the basis the proposed dwelling meeting the exception criteria for isolated dwellings in the open countryside.
Next slide. So the
application site is located on land to northwest of Church Views in Pittsford, and the site's location is indicated on the slides by the red star.
The site is currently used as paddock grazing land and is accessed through the driveway to Church Views, which is connected to Church Lane South. The site is in the open countryside and is surrounded by open fields and ponds to the west. There is also a public footpath to the west, and the Grade 2 star listed All Saints Church and Churchyard are located to the south. Next slide. So this slide is the site location plan. Next slide. And this slide shows the proposed site layout. Most of the site is covered by ridge and furrow. There is A and B proposed to be retained, and the wet field area is the northwestern part of the site. In addition to the proposed dwelling, the application proposes solar panels and plant building to the east of the site, a pond, a driveway that curves inwards towards the dwelling, and landscaping with hedge and tree planting. Next slide. So the proposal is for a traditionally designed 6-bedroom dwelling with two separate wings away from one another and joining it with accommodation spread across 2 floors. The dwelling proposes to use a range of architectural features and materials.
and
These are described in more detail in the report.
In terms of outbuildings, these are limited, with the single-storey garage to the north of the dwelling and apple store to the south-east, and a small pavilion to the northwest of the driveway. And these slides, that shows the floor plans of the building. Go to the next one. And these are the elevations of the proposed dwelling. Next slide. This is the floor plans and elevations of the proposed pavilion. And these show the solar panels. And this is the existing building that will be used as proposed plan for the solar panels. Okay, next slide. Access would be via a long drive along the western boundary of the site, and this curves inwards towards the dwelling. This slide shows the access from Church Lane past the existing property at Church Mews, and this would remain unchanged. Next slide. These slides show the visual impressions of the proposed dwelling. Now we'll move on to site photos as well. This application has been submitted to be assessed against the criteria for isolated dwellings, where the design is of an exceptional quality. Accordingly, the proposal has been assessed against the criteria for paragraph 84E of the National Planning Policy Framework, policy RA6 of the Part 2 local plan. It is considered the proposal would not meet the two strands of paragraph 84E, and therefore the design should not be regarded as being of exceptional quality, in that it is neither truly outstanding nor would it significantly enhance its immediate setting will be sensitive to defining characteristics of the local area. Any benefits to the dwelling minor would not outweigh the harm and conflict with the development plan and national policy. Next slide, just cycle through these. Regarding the dwelling's design, officers consider that the proposal does not reach the exceptionally high bar for design required under paragraph 84E. The proposal would appear as relatively large detached country house, draws some inspiration from the English country house design and the local vernacular, but there's been presented in a more domestic and manageable scale for the use as a family home. The scheme lacks the architectural clarity, material authenticity, and compositional coherence necessary to be considered truly outstanding, or to reflect the highest standards in architecture. And these slides show the views of the site itself. As you can see, we can go back to the previous one. They're characterised by the open paddock land, original furrows, and sloping topography. Next slide. Besides the former Anglian water building, shown on the slide here, the site is devoid of buildings and contributes to the wider character of the open countryside that surround it. Next slide. Now these slides show the current access into the site. And next one. And there's the field gates access as well. This slide shows the views of the site from All Saints Church, which includes the application site. These views demonstrate the rural character and appearance of the landscape to the north of Pittsford, which is characterised by open agricultural fields sloping topography, and the clusters of trees and mature vegetation. Next slide. And these slides show the views of the site from the footpath to the west. These views reinforce the fact that the application site and surrounding area are generally void of buildings and their associated curtilage, specifically ones which are imposed on the landscape. Development of the application site will cause harm to the character and appearance of the locality by introducing substantial built form in an area that is integral to the character of Pittsford. Again, these are views from the footpath. And then these are views, sort of long views from the entrance at Bridgeworth Country Park, and long views from Grange Lane, Pittsford. On balance, the proposed development is not considered acceptable, and there is conflict with both local and national policy, demonstrated in the officer's report. The application is therefore recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. At this point, are there any questions? Anything you'd like to ask officers? No. Okay, we will move to public speaking, and we'll start with Kim Watson and local resident.
That one?
That's it.
Right, okay. So good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Kim Watson, and I'm speaking as a neighbouring landowner and village resident directly affected by this application in Pittsford. And first of all, I'd like to make clear the objection is not personal towards the applicant. However, I strongly believe this particular development is simply in the wrong location and would have a significant impact on the surrounding area. Pittsburgh is generally a peaceful village surrounded by open countryside. There's lots of historic character. The land to the north of the village, especially around Church and the All Saints Church, has always felt open, natural, and with clear, uninterrupted views across the valley towards Brixworth. This proposal for the property would fundamentally change that. The scale of the house is extremely large for the location. It would be a very tall and prominent house in Tower, being seen from both the church and from the A5 highway looking towards the church from across the valley of Brixworth. Alongside the house come a long driveway, outbuilding, solar panel bank, security systems, lighting, parking areas, pond, garden, features, and extensive landscaping, all within an area which is currently open countryside we've just seen. In addition, topographical surveys don't seem to take quite account of the topography of my own adjacent land, which does slope away extensively, which would leave the development perched quite at a high level above the surrounding fields and in quite a domineering position. Once established and land is allowed in a rural setting, the character of the area changes forever. The openness is lost permanently, and there'll be an increase in noise levels, activity and pollution in what is currently a fairly quiet and untouched corner of the countryside. My family have been enjoying the land for 35 years, and during this time we've had horses, sheep, pigs, chickens, grown vegetables, planted a number of trees, replanted hedgerows, encouraged wildlife habitats to thrive. My land borders the Faxton Brook and includes 2 small ponds. These ponds will support a variety of wildlife, including otters in the area. As a family, over the years, we've enjoyed watching this area become increasingly rich in wildlife, which has had the opportunity to exist with little disturbance. And when I walk down to tent at night, I often have birds flying above me and observe owls swooping for their supper. However, there's a red light, so I don't have anything to eat. The area is truly a dark sky at night, and with so very, very little light pollution. Building a property in this area is not only the loss of openness, but also the disruption of wildlife habitats that are increasingly rare and valuable. I know there's always been mentioned various messages and correspondence received concerning the application, but the area is privileged to have bats, owls, deer, badgers, otters, and to name but a few. My property directly joins development sites along 2 sides, one being where the solar panels and building will be. Both of these will form large dominant structures, overshadowing the fence line and pasture land, leaving the area feeling quite enclosed and overpowered, creating a rather hidden feel. The other boundary is at the bottom of the applicant's sloping field, and consistently over many years in this area, in both of the fields, it has shown very high to table level. My concern is that the building of such a large property and substantial groundworks that would be needed to build it, the subsequent changes to runoff, it will interfere with the natural ridge and furrow drainage system which is there and worsen the water level stroke flooding in the surrounding land, basically including my own property. Also, I'm concerned that at wetter times of the year, the proposed pond, which has been introduced, could overflow and further contaminate or flood my property. The planning officer's report highlights this proposal fails to meet the exceptionally high standards required for isolated countryside homes, and I entirely agree with that conclusion. And reading through the report as a non-planning expert myself, it's clear there are still major concerns about visual impact, the effect on the landscape, the relationship with the conservation area and the church, drainage, flooding concerns, and the overall impacts on the rural character of the area. As a neighbour, I have also genuine concerns about the practicality of having my peaceful land developed to this scale, and feel there is something important about protecting the identity of the area for now and the future. The land is currently part of the countryside, settling around the church on the edge of the village. Once developed to this scale is built, there the rural gap of openness has gone, can never truly be restored. So for all the reasons I've tried to put across, I respect the committee to support the officer's recommendation and refuse the application. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Are there any questions from committee? No? Thank you very much. Okay, so at this point, are there any points you wish to put on now? Okay.
So we now
Start debate on this application. Councillor Frost.
Unless anyone wants to talk about my proposed devices.
Okay. Yep, so we've got Councillor proposing to go with the recommended device, seconded by Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair.
Just to summarise, motions.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I'm curious, can you put the picture back up, please? The art question of what the proposed development will look like. Yeah. Now, obviously, I'm not an architect, but that looks pretty impressive to me. I wouldn't meet the design standards. I mean, that's sort of less than 200 yards from the church, which is grade 2 listed, which is a tower built on bit, and this is obviously pulled from that, to my mind, and I'm not sure that, you know, that it isn't worthy of being there. I mean, I think if you showed that picture, you've got one of these on the street, they'd say no. You ask them where that would be, I would have no doubt they'd say that's in the museum. Is my thought on it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Harris.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think the important fact here is that the officer has indicated, which is the defining characteristics of the local area. That is a very open area, open landscape. It's my understanding that that particular surrounding area of Pittsford is currently pretty hot in terms of paragraph proposals. There's quite a lot of them sitting in the mix. And I think if we were to agree to this one, and I think the officer set out very clearly it doesn't comply, it's not outstanding in any shape or form, we would be opening the door for potential rental others. So I think the context is really important, and obviously it's the neighbouring council that we're very familiar with, and it would look like a carbon on the horizon, simply. Thank you.
Councillor Ware.
Thank you. The paragraph 84 house applications are always difficult because beauty is the eye of the beholder. However, I think office made it perfectly clear that we should look at this in context. And if you look at Pittsford Village and then look at the proposed design, it doesn't sit comfortably with other properties in that particular area, sitting next to a grade 2 listed church with various things. We've got rental on there, we've got stone on there, we've got a copper roof poking in on bits of it. It isn't in keeping with the area, so it is difficult because in the right place it might be a really appropriate thing, but my view is it's not suitable as a paragraph 54 outstanding design in the area that it's proposed. I also have concerns about flooding, and I note that the local flood agencies have come back, but there are still things that they're not satisfied with either. And I'm minded not to support this application and actually go with this as advice and refuse it. Thank you.
Councillor Murphy.
Just on the point of it being an exception, people, you know, Councillor Ware saying about it not fitting in with the local area. Is the whole point of this paragraph that it doesn't? Because my understanding is that for it to be exception should stand out. And so, in not keeping with the local area, I think that would give evidence to support that it is sort of exception. So that's what I just want sort of want to get clarity on whether that paragraph means that it has to have sort of similar materials and everything with the local area, or whether it means that it should just be, you know, exception, which is very subjective.
Councillor Kibble first.
Thank you. I mean, I think these issues about what's acceptable and what's tasteful can be very subjective. I think the officer actually set out very clearly a number of criteria which align with national planning policy and to take into account those local circumstances. And I think if we took a strong one around here about what kind of design, come up with all kinds of different answers, that's why I think it's really important that we look at what the national criteria are, look at what the local circumstances are. I think the officer actually set those out very clearly indeed. And I'm quite happy to go with that, because if you don't go by some standards which are set objectively, nationally and locally in terms of what exceptionality means, then every time an application like this comes up, we'll be doing a round robin of like plan. And I think if you go down that road, you end up completely fishing. So I'm very happy to go with the officer's recommendations on this particular application, bearing in mind that this area is of outstanding beauty, and if we're going to agree plan, planning permissions there, planning applications there, then they do need to fit with the proper planning guidance and standards. So I support the officer's recommendation.
Yes, so I think it's important to refer specifically to the MPPF 8. A paragraph which says the design exceptional quality in that is truly outstanding, reflecting the highest standards of architecture and will help raise standards of design generally in rural areas, and it's not a wall, and would significantly enhance the immediate setting and be sensitive to the defining characteristics of the local area. This clearly isn't. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Don't do exactly the same thing. And question that very thing. We have a church or a bit less. It's grade 2 listed for being a very much similar style. Yet this is somehow not exceptional architecture. Because of the tower or the building. It's just a church. It's about 200 yards from where the church is. And that's, you've got the tower, and then, well, if you bring it up, but it's side by side. See, it's very similar to the church, apart from the chimneys. And, it's the mitigation of the wetland. It's going to be at the bottom there. That's, well, it seems to be in the report, and paragraph 8.14 has unusual qualities. Well, clearly much better than usual. That looks a lot better than what it is there. It's impressive, striking. I think it is. I'm not sure how that would be. Obviously, if this isn't happy, go to the planning inspectorate, and they say, oh yeah, that's outstanding. And then you're playing catch up round and round in circles. And they make a decision that looks pretty impressive.
Councillor Berrell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm more than happy to go with the officer's recommendation for refusal.
Okay. Any further comments from the committee?
I mean, I just thought, if we're being asked to compare it with All Saints Church, Oxford, is it just worth bringing it up? The committee can see what the church does, or is that regarded as a waste of time? I'm happy to, and we can just crack on. Actually, that's fine.
We haven't been in church, but traditionally in terms of English culture, churches are seen as the common buildings in the landscape.
Exactly.
In our view, this probably could be detract from the setting potential of the church. The church and the village sit in the landscape. We don't consider this actually enhance the landscape. People have views on the design of the house itself. It's not just what the house looks like, it's where it sits in the landscape. Does the landscape actually allow for a dwelling of this design, this size, to sort of sit comfortably and enhance the immediate surroundings? We say not. Very nice house though it is, it's not the right place for this type of development.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any further comments? No, we shall move forward with the original proposal.
Thank you, Chair. Proposal. Councillor Frost, like to continue with your proposal. Councillor Harris, are you happy to second? The proposal was to refuse the application in accordance with the case officer's recommendation, as per the refusal reasons set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I see a show of hands in favour of Councillor Frost's proposal? 10. Those against? 0. Abstentions? 1. And that's carried. We now move on to item 7, which is 21 Whitegate, Hansbury, Northampton. I will now hand over to the case officer, Jayan, to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is at 21 Whitegate, Northampton, and the proposal is for a first floor side extension, which creates a two-story front gable. So this slide shows the location plan of the site, which shows that it's located within a cul-de-sac, and the cul-de-sac is for 5 properties, and each are detached dwellings with sufficient generous garden spaces. Next slide, please. So the site has quite a bit of history that has been raised as concerns. The application was called into committee for development of the site, and the planning application histories are, so this is the original dwelling, and next slide. So this was originally proposed in 2024, which was not considered acceptable by the council, and later amendments were made to the plan. Next slide, please. As such, in the 2024 application, the proposed that was accepted was a wraparound extension to the west side and single-story detached garage on the east side. Next slide. Later in 2025, a Section 73 application was sent in for widening garage structure from 6.4 meters to 7.5 meters, which was approved. So this is the current proposed plans. The dark grey ones show you the previously approved plans, and while the light grey ones show you the first floor side extension that's currently proposed. Next slide. So within the ground floor plan, there is no significant alteration except to a 0.5 meter extension or in fact playroom area that was approved for extension. Next slide, please. So this is the additional structure that is proposed as first floor side extension. Next slide. So, as you can see, the proposed first floor side extension creates a front gable, and it's been hinged to the side as to reduce any bulk and massing that's caused by the extension. As the site has generous space and it can accommodate a first floor side extension, and it does not detract from the surrounding areas. If you could, next slide. As you can see within the cul-de-sac, there are several properties with gable front ends, and such we consider that the proposed front gable would not detract from the character of surrounding areas. And these are also photos of where the extension would be. It would be about the next to the garage structure where the solar panels are. Next slide. So these are similar photos from the front, and next slide. This is where towards the side garage, the first floor side extension will be proposed, and the other photos from the rear side. So as such, we have concluded that as a proposed site can accommodate a explore site extension and it's considered to be within respecting the character of the surrounding area and dwelling house as it has general space. It's considered acceptable and it's been approved. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Do the committee wish to answer your questions? Councillor Thurman.
Thank you for the presentation. A few questions. Was the assessment relying on existing trees and vegetation for the visual amenity impacts of the development, first of all?
For visual amenity, what we've considered is that there are separation distances that's considered in the residential extension guidance. So we're considering neighbouring properties to the east side. There's a separation distance that's said to be 13 metres, while existing there are 25 metres of separation distance, which is considered sufficient. So that's the main amenity point that we've taken into consideration. So, yes.
Okay. Also, could you confirm for me, was it assessed the relationship of the proposed development to the neighbouring boundaries, particularly in terms of scale, proximity and potential overbearing and dominant impact?
Yes, it was considered, and as it's been said by from the shared boundary is about 10 metres away. The physical side extension will be set 10 metres away from the shared boundary to the east side, so this was taken into consideration during the assessment.
And with all the revised, the revisions on that, were they specifically addressed with these concerns?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Sorry, can you also clarify the changes were made through the various revisions and whether these were specifically to address the concerns regarding the impact on neighbouring amenity?
Yes, this was considered while during the period that was the proof was able and while we requested them to make it ahead to reduce the overbearing impact onto the neighbouring properties. So, yes.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions from the Councillor?
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, I didn't catch what you said about the distance of the boundary on the east side of the property. What's that, please?
So there is within appendix, there is within the restriction and existing guidance of the town, there is a set specific distance from the side elevation of the proposal to the elevation of the neighbouring property that is 13 metres. So yeah.
So it's taken not the boundary from the neighbouring property, yeah?
It is from the elevation of the elevations.
Any further questions? No. Okay, so we'll now move on to public speaking, and we'll start with John Smith. There's a microphone button there, you press that, and a little microphone.
Yeah. Whoops. Hello, everybody. John Smith is my name. I'm a long-standing resident of Whitegate. Yeah. I've lived in Whitegate for over 41 years and been a parish councillor for 8 of them. I suspect that some of you councillors may forgive me if you... Councillor, forgive me if you do know or may not know the history of the development. So I'll tell you a little bit about it. Back in the late 70s and 80s, there existed an enlightened and visionary New Town Development Corporation, which allocated 4 or more pieces of land around Northampton that people could apply to purchase plots and build their own 3 or 4 bedroom homes on, to their own design and with generous plot sizes, gardens front and rear. There were planning regulations they had to comply with. Purchasers had to comply with any covenants also. A major one was that the properties could not be used for business purposes. Others were parking spaces and room for a boat or a caravan to the side. The New Town Development Corporation was shut down and their assets and liabilities were taken over by the Borough Council. In the 41 years I've lived there, people have attempted to purchase 4 of the houses in Whitegate. There are only 34 of them, incidentally. into care homes for service users, but not for elderly care service users, mostly users with social or behavioural issues. Residents combined objected and fought to have applications rejected, and they were successful. The owner of one house even wanted to build a second house in their garden. That was also applied for and rejected. I've been an objector to this house extension from the time of the very first one, and I think this is about the fifth or the sixth one made for a little bit more and a little bit more. Mainly on the grounds that the house was intended to be used for motor trade purposes, which I know that the applicant denies, even though he is in the motor trade and has rather a lot of cars in and around coming and going to the house. I'm now disappointed, but I'm resigned to the fact that some planning permissions have already been granted. I do believe that this applicant is playing the planning system and gaming it. The applicant has made little or no effort to take into account the effect of his extension on his neighbours. He has told many untruths to his neighbours from the beginning, telling some not to worry, as it would be a considerable time before he would have the funds to carry out the work, and yet he's well into it. He further added that they are mostly elderly people and should not be living in such large houses. That's the history. I'll move on to this latest application, this little bit of extra that he's looking for. I believe that this is supposed to any extension is supposed to match the brickwork, mortar and tiles of the house, but he is already not doing this. One of the bits to the west, the smaller single-storey bit, the brickwork hasn't been matched, nor have the tiles, nor has the mortar. He's disregarded what was supposed to have been required. He's also removed more trees and shrubs from the site, and done this while birds are nesting this year. From the work being carried out over the past week, he appears to be assuming that his application has been approved with building of a wall and very deep foundations. The appearance of the house and the pavement is now very unattractive, and will probably get worse when more dormer windows are put in, and I suspect more solar panels, because at the moment the main part of the house is covered in them. Now, I know there are benefits for them, but I do think that there is some planning regulations that says there are some limits. The view from the garden number 22 is going to be spoiled very much. It's going to be overshadowed by a two-storey ugly brick wall and tile roof. Has anyone from the council visited the property and seen the work in progress? If not, I suggest you urgently do visit it. When considering this application, please think how you yourself would feel if you were a neighbour to this going on in an area with houses of all a similar size.
Can you conclude your statements, please?
Yeah. The owner of number 22 will be speaking after me. He has gone into breaches of building regulations, and I support them. I've read them, and he will tell you what they are. Yeah. Thanks. That's all.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee for the speaker? Councillor Beryl.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarity and possibly for the rest of the committee, the application in question is for the gable end. Is that correct? Yes. Is the gable end in the centre? Is that correct? Yeah. The rest has all got planning permission for various applications, and it's purely for the gable end, the removal of the solar panels and the gable end.
Yes, it's for the front gable, and it's a two-storey side extension as well. If you go into the elevation plans,
yeah.
So if you see the red line, that's the original, and the extended part to the side is the first floor side extension, and the front gable is added as well.
Thank you for clarifying. Yeah. And one more thing, if I may, please, John. If you do have any material concerns that they're not adhering to, then please.
Steve has got them all.
Thank you.
He is a retired MD of a building firm, and he's more conversant with regulations and planning than I am. Yeah.
Any further questions for the speaker? No, well, thank you very much. We now have Steve Cook, who's also a local resident.
Good evening. I take it the mic's on, is it? It's
yeah. Just make sure you speak into it.
That's a very good start then, isn't it? I'd like to start by saying my name's Steve Cook. I actually live at number 22 Whitegates, which the boundary is adjacent to number 21. I think I'd first like to start by just going back on a small piece of history, particularly of what the planning officer has said. Because firstly, what I believe in what I listened is that she failed to say that the reason planning was granted for the first application, which was a very large application, was that the bedroom that we're now talking about had to be omitted because she believed it was an overdevelopment of the plot if it was continually to be built. So this bedroom was omitted, and because, again, as I'll just refer this because it's very important that it's an overdevelopment of the site. Secondly, she was asked a point about trees. I'd just like to clarify that her answer wasn't 100% correct, because she stated in giving planning permission for the garage, which originally she said had to be reduced, otherwise it was part of an overdevelopment again, and then was allowed to be made bigger, was going to be shielded by existing trees. And that was part of the planning application's approval. These trees were cut down just prior to them actually starting work on the garage block. So I believe that is a clear breach of planning because they were there to remain, to try and sort of make the visual aspect of this garage and roof better for number 22. Also, just as a sideline, just to make you aware that I also believe that the garage that is currently under construction, and it's quite clearly to be seen under construction. I did send photographs in, but I believe they're not being shown for one reason or another, is not being built as the planning drawings that were approved, and therefore is a breach of planning. And I have contacted the enforcement officer twice to make them aware of these breaches, and I'm awaiting the outcome of those breaches. Also, as building work has progressed, the height of the garage is also too high, in my view. And again, we've added that to the enforcement notice that we've requested the enforcement officer to come to. So I think there's a slight bit of history to where we're going, and I say I don't think the case officer was quite 100% in showing what the reality is. Also, the photos that are being shown are from the front elevation. And again, the case officer hasn't pointed out, because she has not visited the site and seen the site from our side, the boundaries of the properties dive away at an angle. They're not parallel, so the large gap that you see at the front is not what you see at the rear. And the measurements that the case officer has said, in my view, is incorrect, for two reasons. One, they haven't been measured and the planning officer hasn't seen them from our side. Actually, that's a great photo. You can see the way that the boundary line cuts across. And you can see that the building is very close to the boundary. Hasn't been to see it from our side. And two, that the boundary that is drawn on the drawings isn't drawn 100% correct. So if I can go now to the reasons why the planning officer believes that this should be granted, I'd like to say that I think these are flawed in a number of areas. So the first area is that she stated that the measurements from the boundary is 8 metres. I think in reality, at the back of the building, it is only 5 metres, not 8 metres. And also she stated that from the house, it is 28 metres. It is in fact only 20 metres. So instead of it being 28 metres, it is a lot shorter, which has a bigger impact on us. So, and that would be seen quite clearly if a site visit had been undertaken. She then goes on to say that the proposed extension will project a modest 500 millimetres from the existing front elevation.
Can you conclude your statements, please? Okay,
so on the front elevation, this is not correct. It's going to actually be 4 metres from the height of the on the height of the ridge. The case officer stated that it's a 3-bed house. It's a 4-bed house, and she also states that the gable that's going to be built is a small gable. 5 metres by 2.5 metres isn't a small gable, and doesn't match the existing house. And if I can just quickly say in conclusion, if you grant this permission, you're going against the planning authority, because they have to remain consistent. And if they've already said it's an overdevelopment, then how can they now say this can now be granted? It is completely wrong. And I think the only way that this can be resolved today, that if the planners cannot... Can you summarise now, please? If the planners cannot agree to not give planning permission for this, then it's really important that before a decision is finally made, that they visit the site so they can actually see for themselves the true impact it's having on 22, and not just take the front elevation of the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee for the speaker? No. Oh, Councillor Furman.
Thank you. Thank you for your input. What do you think is the greatest impact to your amenity from this? Is it the overbearing impact, or light, or the outlook?
I think that there's 2 or 3 impacts on it. The first one is clearly the overbearing impact. All the houses in Whitegates have a large amount of space between the properties, and the value of the houses was obviously dictates that. We are now the only house in Whitegates that, from our lounge window, we've got a wall that is in line with the boundary of our fence. Everybody else has a large gap between it, and so that is one of the issues that we got. Is certainly overbearing. There's clearly a loss of light as well, and the proposed extension is going to make that worse because of this gable that's being built. The ridge line is going to take further light away from us. So they're certainly the key areas that are going to affect us as a resident of the property.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions from the committee? No? Okay, thank you very much for that. Unfortunately, Councillor Pinder Chauhan has not been able to attend the meeting, so we'll now move on to Ralph Thompson, who, on behalf of the applicants.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak. The main reason that I'm here is just really to clarify the situation with the applicant's working situation. Gary and myself have been working together for some 15 years, and we run an MOT station in Buckingham. So really all I'm trying to do is confirm the fact that Gary does not run any businesses from home. He's a family man. He's just looking to extend his house slightly to accommodate his growing family. And there seems to have been some confusion as to whether or not there was any business being running from that property, and I can confirm categorically that the only business that he runs is in Buckingham, and everything that's done in his home is personal. And I'd encourage you to support the officer's recommendation and approve the application.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? You remain seated. Are there any questions for the... yeah, Councillor Frost.
Thank you for that. Just to clarify, you're the business partner. You're not the agent.
Correct.
Do I take it the applicant was unavailable, or
The applicant's about to speak.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I thought he was going to speak before me, but
all right, thank you.
I got called up first.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Any further questions? Councillor Faber, sorry, can you remain seated until other questions have been asked?
I find it quite hard, considering you're not the applicant. I can understand you've been put in a position.
Yeah.
But looking at the current scale of it and where it sits in the proposal, you know, it doesn't remain proportionate to the other properties and the neighbouring boundaries. So do we know what measures are being taken at all?
My understanding is that other properties, other neighbouring properties, have had similar extensions granted previously. And my understanding is it's in keeping with those.
Are they going to be screening or making sure that it's not overbearing to other properties?
I believe so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions from the committee? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We now have Gary Kyriakos, the applicant.
Chair and members of the committee, I would like to first say I'm pleased that the application for the proposed two-storey site extension has been recommended for approval. I would also like to recognise the constructive work undertaken between our agent and the planning officer in developing a scheme that addresses planning considerations and has ultimately been supported by the head of planning. The proposal has been carefully designed with regards to both the site and its surroundings. The property sits on a comparatively large plot, and the scale and the form of the extension are not out of keeping with other properties within Whitegates or the wider surrounding area. In recent years, both 17 and 19 Whitegates have had planning granted and completed similar site extensions to what I've proposed. This extension is solely for the purpose of having a usable fourth bedroom for a growing family. Importantly, officers have concluded that the proposed accords with local planning policy. The assessment confirms that the development would not result in a harmful loss of light to neighbouring properties and would not cause undue harm to the character or appearance of the close. We believe that this is a proportionate and well-considered proposal that respects both the site and neighbouring residents. We respectfully ask the committee to support the officer recommendation and approve the application.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Councillor Frost.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just a bit curious, I suppose. I think you am I right to say you bought the house in autumn of 2021?
Sounds about right, yes.
And I mean, as far as I can tell you, that you're putting in an application on average about once a year, at least. That's quite unusual, at least in my experience. And is it? I mean, is it? Just the family's expanding that quickly? What's happening?
That's a very good question. Really, I've only put one application prior to this one, but I've had so much backlash from neighbours, which I was very surprised about, that we've amended it multiple times to try and make it as easy on the eye for all the other neighbours. A lot of it could have been, what's the word when you automatically granted? What's the word for it? Permitted development. For instance, the wraparound side. But I thought it makes sense to do what we could do. Our family's growing. I've got very young children. I want to just get the house done to a point because we don't want to move. This is our forever home. To make it the way I wanted. I love cars, hence the large garage. I've always owned many, many cars. That's nothing to do with business or anything like that. They say do what you enjoy. That's what I want to do. Our children are growing up. We're planning on having more, so I just want the space. It's a 4-bedroom house now. The 4th room is literally a wardrobe. We can't get anything in there. It would be nice to actually have a usable room and a wardrobe in there. That's all. We're not planning on doing anything else with the house.
I think that's great. Just for the completeness, though, there had been 3 other full applications that have been approved. You said it's really
They were
2.
amendments, so they weren't. There was only one original one which we scaled right back on, and this one just to put the room on top of the current garage. That's it.
Okay. Any further? Councillor Cartwright.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, my voice is going. Sorry. Sorry, it's not quite clear on the plan, sir. Are you moving the garage itself closer to your fence line while you build a new part that you're putting in the middle? Are you sort of moving the garage or just changing the front of it and making the garage smaller?
So this particular application is just to put a room on top of the original garage. On the previous application, the original garage is now the playroom just there. So that's a playroom for the children, and I made a new garage on the right-hand side to have my cars in there. So it was basically the original application, get rid of the original garage, make it into a room, and make a separate garage on the right-hand side, which was already approved, and that's been built.
Okay, so that's a single door on your garage, not the double door that's...
It'll be one large single door, yes.
Okay, and that's moved closer to the fence line now?
Yes.
So you can't park cars on the side?
No, so before I used to be able to hide my cars in the corner, but they would get covered in rubbish, and I've had to recently paint one of my cars because of bird droppings.
Yeah.
So it was just nice to have somewhere that I can store my cars. They're not cheap cars, and they're my pride and joy. So being able to store them somewhere was my main thing.
Thank you for that.
Any further questions? No. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, Councillor Furman.
Thank you. It's not a material question, by the way, this, but your previous business partner made a point that you're not running a business from there. Am I allowed to ask what your business is?
So we own an MOT and repair centre in Buckingham.
Right.
Like I said, I love cars.
Sorry, this is not a...
No, that's fine. I love cars. That is my passion. So, Ryan and I have an MOT centre where I can play with my cars and do things over there. And it's just really nice to have somewhere at home to have your house inside when I'm done with it. It will be.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any points you wish to come back on this stage?
No, thank you.
Okay. So we now move to the committee to debate this application. And we start with Councillor Rainbird.
Is it working now? Oh, that's good. I think we're hearing 2 very different sides of the same story. One coming obviously from the residents with the visual impacts and amenities, where from the owner, he's a family man, he just wants somewhere for his kids to grow up. And I think all well and good going off drawings and pictures, but I think, like the residents have said, I think a site visit is going to be very reasonable and would give us a better picture of the layout of the land. Would like to see what everyone else thinks.
Councillor Frost.
If that's a proposal, I'd happy to second it.
Okay, Councillor Ware.
Can I just ask a question? Because, Eamon, could you go back to the plan that was up a few minutes ago? Keep going. That one. Right, stop there. Can you confirm for me the dark grey has already got planning permission?
Yes.
So the boundary issue has already been approved?
Yes.
So the only thing we're talking about is the light grey square?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Harris.
I know there are separate issues, but obviously we've heard that there are some enforcement issues that have been raised with regards to this. That's a separate point, but I'm minded to go with the comment that was made earlier, potentially, that perhaps a site visit would be sensible. I have to make one comment again, and I've done this before when I've subbed on this committee. It's disappointing that the councillor that called it in isn't here to make representation. Our constitution does say that they should. It's not compulsory, but you know, I just need to flag that because I think it's important to make that point.
I'll just address that point. She did contact us just before the meeting to say that she had a home emergency.
That's fine. I accept that point, but I think we obviously have a constitution for a reason. I think it's important.
No, she was scheduled to come.
Appreciate that. So I think there does seem to be quite a lot of different perspectives, but I think the point that Councillor Ware's just made is really important. The dark grey bit is already approved. So the boundary issue, I think, doesn't have any relevance in this context. It's really about that sort of light grey at the front, effectively. But I would go with a couple of my councillor colleagues have said it might be worth a visit to have a look at it in context, and that seems to be a sensible suggestion.
Councillor Rainbird.
Sorry, so obviously I'd like to propose a site visit, but that's why I'm recommending a site visit, because obviously I think people have got not confused, but they have too many things in their head. Obviously, like you said, the dark grey is already approved, so the boundary issue is not something we should be talking about. So I think, yeah, site visit's just going to get us in the right mindset when we're there.
Okay, and you're happy to second that? Yep. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. It's proposed by Councillor Rainbird and seconded by Councillor Frost that that a decision on this proposal be deferred for the purposes of a committee site visit. That committee site visit will seek to assess the scale and layout of the proposed development and its potential impact on its surroundings. And I'll put that to you, Chair, for a vote.
Thank you. Can I see a show of hands in favour of the proposal? 9. Those against? Any abstentions? No. That's it. So we'll defer that for a site visit, and the dates will be issued due course. We will now move on to item 8, which is 48 Charnwood Avenue, Northampton. I will now hand over to Case Officer Nathan Healy to begin the presentation. Yeah, we'll off the record. Yeah, if we do it off the record, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the conversion of a C3 dwelling into a children's care home. Members should be aware of the amended wording for condition 3 shown within the addendum. This wording has been agreed with the applicant to ensure the property is only used for the care of 2 children. On screen now is a site location plan and an aerial view of the site. As you can see, the site is located within an established residential area, with a large majority of the nearby dwellings being bungalows. On screen now are some images of the front of the property. Next. Here are some images of the rear of the property. As you can see within the block plan shown on the screen, the application seeks to remove the low wall to increase the off-street parking. Next one. On screen now are the proposed elevations of the development. As you can see, the only front alteration is the relocation of the front door to allow for improved access. On screen now are the proposed floor plans. The proposed layout is considered to offer sufficient amenity for future occupants by providing sizable bedrooms and amenity spaces. Next one. The report goes into more detail regarding the principal development, placemaking, impact on the local character, neighbour amenity and highway safety. Overall, officers consider that the proposed development is acceptable in land use terms subject to compliance with conditions. The application is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Councillor Ware.
Can you just give me a little bit more information about the current parking? You're talking about removing a wall to increase the parking, but what's the capacity for parking as we speak right now?
So as you can see on that image just to the right there, there's about a space for one car stays comfortably on the site. They could obviously, through PD, obviously they could use the parking to the right. If you look at that screen to the right there, they could probably squeeze another car in there. But at the moment, it's I did one really. Yeah.
Just to add to what Councillor Ware is saying, are they planning to block pave or adjust the garden area in any way to allow for that extra parking?
Yes, they're planning to block pave it or to at least make it to a porous, what they could do on the PD anyway, Class F. So.
Thank you. Any further questions from the committee? Councillor Harris.
Yeah, just one. Will that require extra dropped curbage? Because my understanding of the West Northants policy is that we permit, effectively in most instances, one per dwelling, and it's quite rare for us to extend or add another one.
Yeah, so they'll have to extend it, but that will be done through Section 184 of the Highways Act rather than planning permission, as it's not a classified road.
Any further questions from the committee? No. Okay. We'll now move to the public speaking, and we'll start with Louise Coventry, a local resident.
Good evening, my name's Louise Coventry. I live 2 doors up from this bungalow, but I'm reading this on behalf of another resident who lives to the, if you're looking at it straight away, it's to the left, and his name is Rolf Packwood. I object to this application for the change of use into a children's home at 48 Charnwood Avenue. I want to be clear, I fully recognise the importance of providing care for vulnerable children. However, the key issue is whether this is the right location, and I do not believe that it is. Charnwood Avenue is a quiet, predominantly elderly residential area made up largely of bungalows with a very low level of activity. This proposal represents a material change in the nature and intensity of the use. While described as residential, it operates very differently from a single dwelling, with staffing, shift patterns and regular comings and goings. On a small semi-detached plot, this results in a cramped, over-intensive form of development which fails to respect both the physical limitations of the site and the established character of the area. This is not simply a change of occupant, it is a fundamental change in how the property functions, and it is out of keeping with Charnwood Avenue and the character of the area. The impact on residential amenity would be significant. In a quiet elderly community, the cumulative effect of increased activity, movement and disturbance would erode the peaceful living environment that residents rely on. There are also clear highway safety concerns. This site is located on a well-used bend on Charnwood Avenue where visibility is already restricted and on-street parking narrows the road. This is a known everyday constraint, and additional vehicle movements would intensify activity at the most constrained point, increasing risk, particularly for elderly residents. Parking is already at capacity, and overspill parking will further reduce visibility, add to both safety risks and day-to-day disruption. Conditions cannot resolve these issues. They cannot change the physical constraints of the site, nor the intensity of the use on such a limited plot. In conclusion, this proposal represents an over-intensive and unsuitable form of development that would harm residential amenity and highway safety, and is not compatible with the character of Charnwood Avenue. This is not about the need for care, but about placing an intensive use on a site that is simply not suitable for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? No, thank you very much. We now have Maureen Luke, who's also a local resident.
Good evening. I want to add to what Louise has already said. My name is Maureen Luke, and my family live at number 46 Charnwood Avenue, which means we are directly affected neighbouring residents and have submitted an objection to the proposal on the following grounds: loss of residential amenity, poor internal layout design, noise disturbance, harmful impact arising from the proposal, citing of the kitchen, dining area, lounge, staircase immediately adjacent to our bedroom wall. This is a semi-detached property, and as such, our concerns are particularly significant given that these bungalows were originally designed on a bedroom-to-bedroom basis and were primarily intended to provide quiet living accommodation for senior couples. I may not look like it, but I am one. The proposal would fundamentally alter that living relationship and introduce high activity living accommodation directly beside a noisy, sensitive room. We are raising our concerns to the Planning Committee so that members fully understand the likely impact of the proposal on our living conditions and our well-being. Therefore, I request that this application not be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? No, thank you very much. We now have a verbal statement from Councillor Joanne Blythe.
Thank you, Chair. This has been submitted in writing and I will read this out to the committee on behalf of Councillor Blythe. And I will now begin the statement. Chair, members of the Planning Committee, thank you for allowing me to speak. This objection is not to children in care, it is to the suitability and intensity of this particular use in this particular location. While national policy supports accommodation for looked after children, that does not override the Council's duty to apply its own development plan policies on placemaking, residential amenity and highway safety. In planning terms, this proposal represents an over-intensive operational use within a quiet residential street, and for that reason it conflicts with policies Q1, Q2, M02, M04 and H5 of the local plans. The key issue before members tonight is not who lives at the property, it is how the site will operate. This is not simply a family home occupied by 2 children. The application proposes 24-hour staffing, overnight carers, rotating shift patterns, management presence, visiting professionals, staff facilities in the loft conversion and the use of the outbuilding as part of the operation. The level of activity materially exceeds what would reasonably be expected from the occupation of a modest 2-bedroom bungalow on this street. It is a fundamental change in the intensity and function of the site. Policy Q1 requires development to respond positively to the local character, protect residential amenity and create places that function well. In this case, the operational nature and intensity of the proposal is out of keeping with the established residential character of Charnwood Avenue. Policy Q2 requires development to protect a high standard of amenity for existing residents. The impact on neighbouring amenity in this case has been understated within the officer report. The report accepts there will be overlapping staff movements and likely overspill parking during shift changes. Unlike a typical dwelling, this proposal creates a continuously managed operation with activity throughout the day and night, leading to more staff, more vehicles, more movements and more operational activity. Each activity may appear modest on its own, but planning decisions must assess cumulative impact, the combined effect of continuous staffing, vehicle movements, shift changes, visits and operational activity on the living conditions of neighbouring residents. Residents have raised consistent concerns regarding disturbance, parking pressure, noise and the erosion of residential living conditions. Importantly, 23 objections have been submitted and not a single letter of support received. That degree of local concern should carry significant weight. The parking impacts also remain unresolved, and the officer report notes that parking already regularly occurs along Charnwood Avenue and Lansdowne Drive. That demonstrates existing parking stress, not spare capacity. The proposal therefore adds pressure to an already constrained residential environment rather than accommodating its operational needs fully within the site. This proposal introduces additional vehicle movements from staff handovers, visiting professionals, servicing and deliveries, yet offers very limited on-site parking provision. Members are entitled to conclude that the cumulative impact on highway conditions and residential amenity is unacceptable, even in the absence of a formal highways objection. Members should also give weight to the loss of an existing bungalow from the general housing stock. Policy H5 seeks to resist the unnecessary loss of existing dwellings, and bungalows are increasingly scarce and important homes within Northampton, particularly for older residents and those requiring accessible accommodation. Once lost from the general housing market, they are rarely replaced. Whilst the proposal retains a residential element, it nevertheless removes a self-contained bungalow from ordinary residential use and replaces it with a staffed specialist care operation. Finally, I would like to ask members to distinguish between support for children's care provision in principle and the planning merits of this particular proposal. Members are not deciding whether children deserve care. They are deciding whether this site can appropriately accommodate the level of activity and operational characteristics proposed within this residential setting. In planning terms, this site is the wrong location, and for those reasons, I respectfully urge the committee to refuse the application. And that concludes the statement of Councillor Joanne Blythe. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. As there are no more speakers, does the officer wish to come back on any points?
No, there isn't, no.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll now move to committees to debate this item. Councillor Cartwright.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I know this area. What you can't see on the photograph is that house backs onto the dual carriageway. There are no, it's for elderly residents, as we've heard, and not seen, obviously, but we've heard that residents are elderly, and there are no facilities anywhere. There's no parks nearby. There's nothing for children to do. There are no amenities for anyone else, you know, of a younger age. I agree with Councillor Blythe, and I would be leaning towards refusal on this occasion.
Councillor Frost, I'll come to you afterwards.
Thank you, Chair. Committee one, I brought this subject up before, but I want to say that on the 10th of April this year, our Senior Business Improvement Officer explained to me that I asked the question of how many of our applications resulted in a visit from a highways officer, and the answers come back 3 to 5%. That therefore makes it incredibly unlikely that a highways officer has visited this site, and so my question to Nathan is, do you know of a time and a date when a highways officer visited? Because if not, we'd have to conclude as a committee that they haven't done.
I don't, unfortunately, no.
Thank you.
Councillor McMurtry first, and I'll come to you, Councillor Keeble, afterwards.
Yeah, no, I was just going to agree. You know, I've got concerns that with the sort of parking capacity in the local area, that the increased comings and goings would negatively impact that amenity. So yeah, I'd be sort of minded to agree with Councillor Cartwright there.
Okay, Councillor Keeble.
Thank you. I think that these applications are obviously often very difficult because they do impact on the local area, and they do imply, you know, changes in what's happening in the street. I'm quite familiar with that area, and there have been some changes already, just demographic changes, obviously. Looking at this particular development, and looking at some of the detail of it, I appreciate that there will be more traffic, but the shift patterns are very clear. They're a morning change and an evening change for the support workers, up to 2 support workers. And then there's a 9 to 5 shift pattern for the managers. So that's not a sort of constant coming and going. That is 2 changes in the morning, you know, a change in the morning, a change in the evening, and then 1 person coming from 9 to 5. And whilst it might be more than the traffic is now, I wouldn't call it completely disproportionate or disturbing in a road. The other thing is that looking at the details of the application and the ages of the children, I think it gives you an idea of what the usage there is going to be, and it doesn't suggest that there's going to be the kind of disturbance perhaps that sometimes residents might think. I think that the officers that what's been spelt out is a very careful planning application for children who are in real need of somewhere appropriate to go, actually an area such as this is probably much more suitable than a lot of other areas for children with this level of need. Now, looking through the officer recommendations, they've been very clear about the material planning considerations which we should be taking into account, and I feel that on the basis of that I don't see any material planning considerations that should lead us to turn this one down. So on that basis, I would support the officer's recommendations.
Okay. Councillor Cartwright.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, depending on what type of children would be placed in there, can you guarantee that there's going to be a supply of children that don't need anything? Because there are no facilities there, and I think, you know, with the no amenities for children.
That's not true.
It's you know, there's nothing there. It's Pensioner City, so it's I don't see, you know, there's no mixture of housing. It's all bungalows. There's no different types of families in there. There's no one else to interact with. You need a different area, in my opinion.
Councillor Beryl.
Thank you, Chair. I incline to agree. I think location is incorrect, and I think we need to give considerable weight to the local residents and the complaints received. Thank you.
Councillor Marine-Bird.
I'd just like to add that question to the committee then. What is a suitable location? Everyone keeps going on about this area is not okay, this area is not okay. On many applications that we've had before with children's, you know, the same application, some has been refused, some have been accepted, but every single time it's been everyone saying it's not an acceptable area. So I'd like to ask the committee, what is an acceptable area for a children's care home?
Councillor Harris.
Yeah, I can't answer that question specifically, but I think it's a very relevant question. Children's care is always very sensitive, as we know, and that isn't really the matter in hand, but I think it's important to remind committee members that Council fully supported the Belonging Charter some months ago unanimously, and that is very much about trying to make sure we do the right thing by children that are in need. Clearly, we have to take into account locations and residents also. I think there is a wider debate or discussion to be had. For me personally, semi-detached may be part of the problem, and this is possibly a conversation I need to raise or have with our planning policy colleagues. Perhaps there is an argument to say that we should be looking at our policies and developing our planning policies around children's care more specifically and more clearly. There are concerns about layout, and I understand the comments that's been made earlier on about the layout and the sort of back-to-back with regards to bedrooms in current layout but different in future. But that's a wider debate, and that's not one that we can resolve, unfortunately, in this committee. But I would like to raise that, and I certainly will raise that with our planning colleagues to see if we can take that discussion further, so we can perhaps answer some of those questions about what's suitable. Should we have a supplementary planning development guide even to make sure that we've got some clarity around those things? My issue with this at the moment is I'm struggling to see what the specific refusal could be or would be based on the way that the officer has arrived at a conclusion for recommendations. So if anyone can find one, please share it, but I can't find a specific reason for that at the moment. Thank you.
Councillor Ware, and I'll come to you afterwards. Councillor Keeble.
Can I just clarify a couple of things? I'm flicking through this again and I can't find what I'm looking for. I seem to remember on one of the plans there is a sensory room planned. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. That is in the, as you said, the shed in the back, but in the outbuilding.
Okay. Okay, so it's not for this committee to describe what type of care might be provided here, but it may suggest that there are special needs that may well be being considered. We can't assume that, but I just wanted you to confirm that I had seen that. The second thing I want you to confirm for me is there is a maximum number of children who would be taken into this property, and that number is 2.
It is 2, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Keeble.
Thank you. I'd just like to quickly respond to Councillor Rainbird's point on the, what's an appropriate place. There is a place being proposed in my ward, which for 2 people, which is right in the middle of a county lines area. Now, personally, I would think that that is also, that is definitely not a suitable place to put children in care. So that's why this place is a normal residential area, and in that it actually does make it a place where you could put children of a variety of types, and it would provide them with a sort of a decent grounding and a place where they could thrive in our care, bearing in mind that we're the corporate parents. The other thing is that there's been questions about the facilities. Well, as Councillor Ware has raised, I've noticed the type of provision which is being set out there, the ages of the children and other things, and it gives you a clear impression of the type of children that this unit is being planned for. And often with these children, it does have to be very specifically tailored and provided. And I would just remind you that there is actually a special school quite nearby that specialises in support for children with autism. So that is one of the facilities that's nearby. There's also Northampton College not far away. There's quite a number of facilities round about which might be very appropriate for the children who are accommodated in this place. So I would argue that there are aspects of this location which make it suitable, although I completely appreciate that for local residents the changes might be difficult and might also appear to be quite complex. But looking at the proposals, I share the view that I can't see a material planning consideration for going against the officer's recommendations.
Councillor Cartwright.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, if you can guarantee a supply of people that don't need anything other than sensory rooms, that's never going to be possible to do, is it? You start off like that, maybe, or maybe not. But it's a children's home. It's a children's home. Anybody can go there. And if you are not someone who needs a sensory room, then you'll need something else to do. And that's where there's no facilities. If you can, up to 17, I think it was it? So, yeah, college up the road. But if you can go to college, you can go from anywhere. Living in a semi-detached property with people right next to your wall in a bedroom, I think they should be detached properties, but that's a different matter, as we've heard earlier. But I think in this instance, in this place, I don't think the effect on amenity of the neighbours and the amenity for any children of whatever level to go and do anything, there's nothing for them to do in that area. Thank you.
Any sort of further comments from the committee? Councillor Ware.
Can I ask for officers' input in terms of what could we be asking in terms of building regs for things like soundproofing and that sort of stuff? Is that something that we can put on as a condition or not? Eamon, can I have your advice?
You put it on as a condition, but would it meet the tests? I would say not. If building regulations already governs that side of things in terms of internal alterations, you're simply dealing with the land use and development of the site. And in this case, we say the land use is residential, which is suitable in this location. And as for physical development, there's no physical development that impacts adversely on residential amenity.
Councillor Rainbird.
Yeah, I think we've had that conversation before, actually, on very similar applications. yeah, obviously it's no, we've got no say over building regs at all.
Again, through you, Chairman, that's not quite true. Building regulations is a separate set of regulations. You, as a planning authority, are here to deal with development of land.
Yeah, no, that's what I meant. Sorry,
and the use of the land. It doesn't mean that it's ignored.
Yeah, that's sorry. I say as well.
But there are separate regulations that deal with those aspects.
I'd also like to say I know it's a very tough one. You know, it's like I said before. What is the right place? So yeah.
Any further comments, Councillor McMurtry?
I'm just not convinced that a semi-detached bungalow is the right place. So I'd sort of be, you know, inclined to agree with Councillor Cartwright here. Yeah.
And moving forward, any proposal?
Yeah, if my colleagues are determined to go for a refusal against officer's advice, I'd like to hear the reasons.
Okay.
Just about to do that, Chair, thank you. Q1, incorporating easily accessible facilities for day-to-day living that enables community interaction and cohesion. I'm pretty sure we've established that we don't have that by means of what they want to design, and that there's nothing in the local area for children to do if they do leave the house. And I think Councillor Pryor mentioned Q2 as well for amenity and layout. And H5, was it on the West Northants joint core strategy? Lost it, yeah. Of existing dwelling, because it's a bungalow for our ageing population just as much as our children coming up. So for those reasons, I would go against officer's recommendation.
Do you want a seconder first, or before we go for a seconder? Okay, summarise them, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thought prudent to summarise before we go for a seconder and a vote, just so Councillor Cartwright can put his case across. The proposal is to refuse the application contrary to the case officer's recommendation on the grounds that the proposal, by reason of its intensification of use of the property and its corresponding impact on the character of the surrounding area and on parking, is contrary to policies Q1 and Q2 of the Northampton Local Plan Part 2 and policy H5 of the West Northamptonshire Joint Core Strategy, and that the proposal results in the loss of a bungalow from the open housing market. Does that adequately summarise the proposal?
Thank you.
Councillor Cartwright.
Do we have a seconder for a proposal, Councillor McMurtry? Okay, and we'll move to the vote. Yep. Okay, can I see a show of hands in favour of the proposal by Councillor Cartwright? Those against? Any abstentions? So that's refused, yeah. Yeah, we can have a 5-minute break. Yeah. Okay, so we now move on to item 9, which is the land at Hill Farm, Upper Hayford. I'll now hand over to the case officer, James Luntz, to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. This application is for 2 commercial buildings on land known as Hill Farm near Upper Hayford. The site is located off junction 16 off the M1, close to the 845 and the Oval service station. Specifically, it's located between the D&M waste management site and the existing commercial buildings to the west. The site is a broadly rectangular piece of land that sits between the M1 to the north and the A45 to the south. The site is accessed along a road which comes off the roundabout on the A45 that also serves the service station, and that access road only serves the waste management site and the existing commercial buildings and is separated from the A45 by a landscape bund. The site benefits from outline permission, which was granted last July for 4,700 square metres of B2 or B8 use with ancillary office space, and it was originally part of a hybrid application which was approved in 2020, which granted full permission for the existing commercial buildings and outline permission for the 4,700 square metres on the current application site. The extant outline permission was granted in July last year, with all matters reserved except for access. Due to a change in approach on a number of technical matters, the current application has been submitted as a full application rather than as a reserved matters application, hence we're here debating it in full. The current application proposes 1,829 square metres of floor space, which is obviously less than the floor space in the outline permission. However, as mentioned, the application is for the construction of 2 commercial buildings, as you can see on the proposed site layout plan up on the screen, albeit there will be 3 units in total. Unit 1 is located along the western boundary adjacent to the existing commercial buildings and will extend to approximately 901 square metres. This unit will be occupied by the applicant, who runs a refrigeration business repairing and maintaining refrigerated lorries and vans. Unit 1 and its associated parking and turning area will occupy approximately 2/3 of the site, and Unit 2 will be split to provide 2 identical units of 464 square metres on the opposite eastern boundary close to the waste management site. The 2 access points and parking and turning spaces are located between these 2 buildings. The site plan also shows pockets of landscaping and native tree planting around the site, which helps soften its appearance and provide biodiversity enhancements. The following images are the proposed elevations and floor plans of the units, and as you can see, they are fairly typical of modern commercial units in terms of their scale, height and general appearance, and the proposed materials and colours are similar to that of the existing commercial buildings to the west. This final image, if you go through those, the final image is of the existing buildings which are located to the west of the proposed site, just to provide some information and context for yourselves. The proposed units will be similarly visible from the A45, but given these existing buildings, I don't believe that they will appear out of context, and it's considered appropriate. Having reviewed the submission and consulted with the various stakeholders in terms of ecology, highways, environmental health and the local lead flood authority, as is set out on the committee report, we consider the principal development has obviously clearly been established, and as officers we're satisfied that the technical aspects of the scheme are acceptable and it would not have any adverse impacts on the surrounding area, and the proposal accords with the development plan. As such, the application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in the committee report. You will note in the addendum that's been circulated that additional conditions relating to the need for a landscaping scheme and maintenance of landscaping have been added to the suggested list of conditions, as they were omitted by mistake at the time of writing the report. It was also noted that condition 14 included a reference to the requirement to provide owl boxes. However, following discussions with the ecology officer, she has confirmed that this was added by mistake and there is no need for owl boxes. Therefore, it is suggested the condition is amended accordingly, as per the wording set out in the addendum. And that's pretty much all I've got to say, and yeah, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee at this stage? No. Okay, thank you. So we now move to public speaking, and we have Kevin Collins, who's the applicant.
Hello everyone, and thanks for inviting me here today to speak to you. As was already said, I'm the owner of CB Transport Refrigeration. We service and repair transport refrigerated equipment. For the last 10 years we've been heavily invested into this area, supporting the surrounding network and all the customer base throughout the UK. As you know, Northampton's got quite a lot of warehouses, but we're not a transport company, we repair them. OPA agreed to this today because it helps with our expansion plan and our continued effort to increase the workforce, which is heavily involved, needed skills for young technicians, because with any skill base, it's a very small pool these days, and we invest heavily into our technicians. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee for the speaker? Councillor Ware.
Delighted to hear you talking about training and employment. Yeah. Have you got any idea on the scale of that increase in your workforce and the opportunities specifically for apprenticeships I'm interested in?
Yeah, there's no national qualification to be a transport refrigeration. We have to kind of get them from truck mechanics or air conditioning guys and chip away and mould them into a transport refrigeration guy. But when we took over the area in 2016, we started off with 2 engineers. We've now got 17 engineers running out to that location, and 80% of them have all been trainees of some description from different trades, etc., etc. Currently, we're on our 4th phase now, working with local councils and colleges to get young people into the business, because, as I say, there's a very extremely small pool of qualified people, especially in our job, because it's quite niche in what we do. But yeah, that's what we do. I'm an ex-engineer myself. My dad started the business off back in '81, and I joined in '92. But we're all heavily involved in training. John Forrest, my service director here, we've got our own trainer now, because we've realised going outside to other people, we just can't get the skill set. So we've actually invested heavily now in a purposed trainee teacher. And that's what we're doing so far. Okay, thanks.
Any further questions? Councillor Harris.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, biodiversity net gain applies in this instance, I presume, given the scale and size of the site. And this falls within the old Daventry local plan area, I presume, given its location. South Northampton, okay. The reason I was asking that was specifically to try and understand whether you were doing anything around renewable energy at all.
Yeah, solar panels. Yeah, I used to own a renewables business as well. So I'll have air source heat pump, air conditioned, probably thinking about maybe a heat pump. Because of the ground and the conditions that we've had, ground source probably won't be suitable for it, but wherever we can. The site manager actually wants to have a beehive. He's got a big thing about beehives at the moment. So yeah, that's whatever we need to do, really, we'll do it. Yeah.
Any more questions? No. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thanks for your time. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, are there any points you wish to come back on?
No.
Okay. So we move to the committee now to debate this application. Councillor Cartwright.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I'm pleased to support a thriving business. There are no objections to this, unless anyone can convince me otherwise. I'll be quite prepared to accept the officer's recommendations on this.
Okay, and so so we've got proposal by and a second by Councillor Keeble.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify that the motion will be to approve the application in accordance with the case officer's recommendations, subject to the conditions set out in the report, and also subject to the amendments set out in the committee updates. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Show of hands in favour of the proposal. That's unanimous. Yep, that's approved. We will now move on to item 10, which is 54 Main Road, Duston in Northampton. I'll hand over to the case officer, Tim Cantwell, to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. So the application is in 2 parts. It's for the conversion of a storage space at the rear of the shop to form a new ground floor flat, including a kitchen extension. The kitchen extension will be over the footprint of an existing timber shed, as you'll see in the photos that follow. The second part of the application is for a retrospective application for some shopfront alterations. So the first slide shows the location. It's in the Duston neighbourhood centre on Main Road. Opposite is the Squirrels pub, if you know the site. The neighbourhood centre also forms part of the wider Duston conservation area, so it is in a conservation area. There again is the site. I've just circled it in the wobbly red line there. If you move on to the next slide. Now, originally, when this was submitted, this was the signage. By the way, the signage element of it is retrospective. And as you can see there, it was box signage, which is internally illuminated, and that has now changed following officer advice and a number of objections. And if you go to that's another angle of the original box signage, which was considered unacceptable. And if we move on along again, Eamon, there's another shot of the box signage over the door, and this is what we have now, which is clearly different. There's the original timber fascia, albeit painted black, and we've just got individual letters pinned to it. If we carry on through the slides, that shows the access to the site, which is just further along. We've got an estate agent building in between there. If we carry on, please, Eamon. These are just some shots of the neighbourhood centre. It shows shops and services. Generally, the buildings are, well, it's in the conservation area, so there's a lot of stone buildings, vernacular design and things like that. If we continue, please, Eamon. Now, this is the back of the shop which is going to be converted. And you can see the original stone buildings at the back, and you've got these single-storey brick outshots, which would have been built after the original building was put up. That there is the timber shed, which will be taken down, and that is where the kitchen extension is going to go. If we continue, that's just looking at the other side. And if we carry on, that's the existing parking space, and behind that there's a small screen where the bins go. And that's, I walked back out there, so you can see you have to pass by another building to get to the parking space. And the next slide, please. This is just the building that's at the back of the site. And the next one, please. And that's looking back towards the site access, and you can just see the Squirrels pub there through the opening. And what we have here are some images of the elevations. And that is from the back, and you can see the kitchen extension on the right, which would replace the shed. If we carry on going through these, that's the kitchen extension there on the right-hand side, which is where the shed currently is. And the next one, please. And that's the other side. One of those buildings will be a bike shed as opposed to habitable accommodation. And there's your floor plans. And you can see the kitchen extension on the top right-hand side of the kind of, it forms a C shape really, and there's a very small courtyard. Okay, so the application was called in. The Parish Council and 17 local residents also objected to the proposals, and the objections included the original signage undermining the character of the conservation area. There's no additional parking for the flat, which would increase pressure on street parking. The existing access is quite poor, which gives potential risk to pedestrian and highway safety, and the flat was considered quite small with poor living conditions in terms of space, light and noise impacts from neighbouring retail and commercial uses. So I'll go through the main issues, I'll start with the shopfront alterations because I think that's the easiest to get through at this stage. The original signage clearly undermined the setting of the conservation area. There was also some heavy shutters over the front door. This is all contrary to local policy and guidance. And this fact was communicated to the applicant, so they changed the signage to what it is now. And our heritage officer stated that whilst there will be a preference for a painted timber signage, what is there now is considered acceptable. Turning to the proposed flat, in terms of the principle of development, the proposal makes use of underused buildings, and it's in a sustainable location with good access to shops, services and public transport, so it's entirely appropriate for residential development to be in this location. In terms of the design of it and the living standards, Well, in terms of physical appearance, the proposal will breathe new life into some underused buildings at the rear, and the kitchen extension and all other alterations will be in keeping. As such, there's no real objections on that matter. In terms of the actual living conditions, the new flat does meet the minimum space standards for a one-bedroom, two-person flat, and an assessment for natural light, which took account of the northerly aspect, demonstrated that there would be sufficient light. The external amenity space is small, but there is plenty of storage for bins and for bicycles and other things that the occupant may own. We consider that nuisance is not considered a problem, and the flat will have to be insulated against this under building regulations in any case. Turning to highway safety and parking, which was a big issue from objectors, there is a lack of a parking space associated with the new flat, and it was said that this would exacerbate existing street parking issues, and also the existing access being poor could undermine highway safety and pedestrian safety, what with the additional movements that may arise from having an extra flat there. However, the local highway authorities argued that there are designated parking bays in Main Road, and there are other parking spaces along Main Road and just off Main Road. Furthermore, they argue that there's little in the way of accident data to say that the existing access is unsafe. And lastly, as it is a sustainable location with good access to shops, services and public transport, it means that car ownership is not an essential requirement for any occupant. And you may well be aware that this argument has been successfully applied at many appeal cases where a lack of parking has been cited as a reason for refusal. So, taking all the above into account, we recommend that the application is approved in line with the principle of sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee members? No. Okay. So we now have one public speaker, which is Councillor Clive, who's the ward member.
Chair and members of the committee, whilst I'm pleased to see that the initial retrospective application for fascia alterations, which were completely out of line with the local conservation plan, has since been dropped by the applicant, I do continue to object quite strongly to this proposal to create a new ground floor two-bedroom flat on the site. One-bedroom, two-person flat on the site. This application constitutes the overdevelopment of a constrained site on a busy local parade and should be refused. I did request this be called into the committee due to the strength of public feeling, as you've already heard, and seen in the volume of objection letters to these plans, 17 against, none in support. Also local media and social media coverage, as well as a request from the Duston Parish Council. Firstly, the assertion by the highways officers regarding the availability of on-street parking in the immediate vicinity could be charitably described as optimistic. I don't believe a highways officer has visited the site, as has already been adequately highlighted by Councillor Frost on another application this evening. Such a visit would be a rarity. Main Road already suffers from significant on-street parking pressure. Recent and ongoing issues which I have personally raised with the council demonstrate that customers of the shop and of the wider area, as well as staff of the shop, frequently park on the zigzag lines which you will have seen outside the front of the shop on the pictures already this evening. This is also being compounded by a cessation of parking availability at the Squirrels during out-of-hours time due to the aforementioned parking issues impacting their trade in the area. It's a private car park which they had allowed for public use. They're now rescinding that, and this is creating additional pressure in the area. This creates clear highway safety risks for pedestrians, particularly children, the elderly and those with mobility issues. That crossing is not particularly safe. Whilst there have not been any recent accidents, there have been accidents in the area, and there have been a number of near misses, particularly recently with the parking on the white zigzag lines. Introducing additional residents without dedicated parking spaces will exacerbate illegal and obstructive parking, contrary to the Northamptonshire Parking Standards 2016 and the Northampton Parking Standards SPD, which require adequate off-street provision to to protect road safety and amenity. There should be a minimum of 3 parking spaces on site for the existing dwelling, proposed additional dwelling and retail unit according to the SPD. There is currently a single space with no possibility, as we've already heard, of adding more due to site constraints. The proposed 2-bedroom flat is excessively small, resulting in cramped living conditions, limited natural light and inadequate private amenity space. Whilst it might meet the minimum standards, I think we should be aspiring for better. And this conflicts with the policy H1, housing density and mix and type of dwellings of the WNC Joint Core Strategy, which requires a mix of housing types and sizes to meet needs, and policy S10, sustainable development principles, which seeks high quality development that protects residential amenity. Most importantly, for the future life of the main Duston High Street and shopping area, this scheme involves the complete loss of essential storage areas serving the retail unit. This restricts the operational flexibility of the existing retail unit and harms the future viability and attractiveness of the shop front for alternative commercial uses. It conflicts with the planning policies that seek to sustain local shopping parades and protect commercial floor space, including policy S9, distribution of retail development, and policy S2, hierarchy of centres of the WNJCS, as well as the broader aims of policy S10. In summary, the proposal fails on parking and highway safety, residential amenity and commercial sustainability grounds. It does represent harmful overdevelopment that will adversely affect the character and function of this local centre, contrary to key WNJCS policies, and I would ask the committee to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee for the Speaker? Councillor Ware.
Did I hear you right, Councillor, that it's already a residential property? There's already a flat there now?
As part of the application, there are also adjustments to an existing residential property which is situated above the retail unit already there. So you have a retail unit and a residential property which would require a car park space each, and there's currently only one serving the site as a whole. So already it's over parked.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? No, thank you. At this point, are there any points you wish to come back on?
No.
The suspense was killing me.
At least I thought about it.
Okay, Councillor Cartwright, do you wish to start?
Chair, yes, sorry, from what we've heard, I do have a further question for the officer, please, if I may. This used to be the flower shop, so now it's a vape shop. Accommodation, which would have been, used above, all the storage space at the back that's now going to be converted into a flat. So, I'm not sure how relevant it is because we keep getting told off for this, but the square footage of the actual shop now is the shop, and there's no more storage space because you're using all the storage space for any items that a normal shop would care to have in stock is all being used for accommodation now. Is that correct? There's no storage space?
Although the space is described as storage space, it is currently not used for anything. I did visit the site, obviously, and I did not show any photos of the internal storage space that is going to be converted, and this is honest truth, it's not being used for shop storage in any case. They're just empty buildings that are, in a way, falling into disrepair.
Yes, if I may, Chair, through you further. Currently, as it's a vape shop, when it was a flower shop, I'm sure they were using all the space that they needed. It may not be relevant because it's maybe to deal with future usage of a shop, but there is literally nowhere to store anything other than now you move your shop front internally to make storage space behind. I'm not sure how relevant that is to this, but I'm worried that you're now shrinking the actual usable space for a shop while trying to get in a property.
May I? Yep. So the applicant has determined that they do not need the storage space. So we can only look at the application as to what's in front of us and not what may happen in the future. So if they think they can operate the shop as it is, and then this storage space is excess to requirements, then there's nothing to say that it can't be turned into a flat.
Councillor Ware.
Thanks. Couple of questions to do with firstly footprint. So, if we were looking at agricultural barns, we would need to maintain a footprint for queue development. Is the plan increasing the footprint of what they're intending to demolish?
No, the new kitchen extension is roughly over the existing timber shed that I showed on the photos. There may be a marginal increase, but it is de minimis if it is.
Okay.
So roughly over the same footprint.
That's fine. My second question is about parking. There's one parking space on there at the minute. How do they enter and exit that? Because it's not a very wide route. And if you drive in, you're reversing back out onto the road, which seems like a really foolish thing to do, in my view. And not many people bother to reverse in. So what's your take on the existing parking?
So they certainly would not be reversing out onto Main Road. There is turning space within the courtyard, the wider courtyard at the back. If you notice when the photo I took of the rendered building towards the rear there, to my right, there was some parking space, turning space around there. Yes, they will probably drive forwards into the actual parking space that's associated, that's there at the moment, and they will have to reverse out of that, but they will only be reversing into private turning space. They won't be going onto the public highway in a reverse gear, that's for sure.
Councillor Keeble.
Does that make sense? So there is turning space to the right of that picture. It is a bit tight, but I have to go with Highways advice. In terms of the access as well, it is an established access onto the highway, and drivers coming in and out of that will go in and out with caution because they know it's a tight access.
May I, Chair? Sorry, okay. Councillor Keeble. The supplementary planning document for Northampton parking talks about 3.3 metres for a width of a single parking space. Are you confident that we have that in place here?
I think a car should be able to fit into that space, and like I said, the Highways had no objections. Their argument is that the flat would, if it generated any additional movements in and out, it is negligible in terms of its impact on the highway network.
Again, through you, Chairman, with parking spaces, that's usually based on new development in terms of achieving what you can. Part of the charm of a conservation area is its historic development, where you get nooks and crannies such as this that's sort of provided. It is what it is. It wasn't built for the car. So you've got to strike a balance between what the advice is in terms of your parking standards against actually reusing and promoting sort of the sustainable reuse of buildings to an alternative use going forward in the interest of the preserving and enhancing the conservation area. So that's the balance you've got to strike, and as officers we judge it, bringing it back into use, retaining the use of the shop, outweigh any potential harm in terms of highways, given that the Highway Authority haven't objected to the application.
Councillor Keeble.
Thank you. It is just a one-bedroom flat, the new flat, isn't it?
Yes, it's a one-bedroom, two-person flat. As Councillor Clive said, there is already an existing flat over the shop there.
Would you like to comment about the issue about the parking spaces? Because there have been quite a few other applications in the Northampton area which don't have parking spaces. I mean, I'm thinking in particular of the block of flats at that have been approved for in the station forecourt, where there's 280 flats.
Again, Chairman, through you, each application on its own merits. Members do not have that evidence before them. Judge this application as you see it, and make the determination. Clearly, members have some concerns about parking. You have the advice of the Highway Authority, which raised no objections. You also have other considerations in terms of the reuse of the buildings, preservation, enhancement of the conservation area.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to ask for some comments on the issue about the number of parking spaces, because I've seen the observations that have been made. There's been quite a lot of comments here, and I wondered if you had any further comment, or if you want to repeat the comments about the adequacy of the number of parking spaces.
So, you would expect a parking space. However, it is often the case, and I think this is the case that is made at appeal decisions, that an occupant would know there would be a lack of parking, and it's likely, not likely, but they may not necessarily therefore want to own a car, or somebody who didn't own a car would probably move into this space because of its location, access to public transport and such like. So the fact that a new parking space is not being provided does not mean to say that somebody would have, an occupant would have a car in any case. We can't assume that. And I think that is the case that is made on appeal for these applications where there is a parking space missing. Yet because of the sustainable location, it is argued that there is every chance that somebody who occupied this flat would not have a car, because they understand there's not the capacity to park it and there are other transport options. And there will be a bike shed as well.
Councillor Rainbird, and I'll come to you, McMurtry, afterwards.
Yeah, just following on from that point, I can't really see any material condition, material reason why we would refuse this application, just like we can't refuse it on highways, because highways have raised no objections, like the officer just said, is existing. So just see what other people think.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't see how this protects and enhances the conservation area. If anything, it takes away from the fact that there is a shop there, and the continued use of that in the future. And yeah, I do have concerns that, based on that it is overdevelopment of this plot.
Any further comments? Councillor Harris.
Yeah, the issue around conservation areas is always a challenge, and I know we can't draw comparisons between anywhere else, but having had past history of a particular planning application in my neck of the woods, which was refused relating to parking issues, and then the inspector determined there were 140 car parking spaces amply on the roads around it. So I think we need to be mindful of that clearly there are some parking restrictions in the area, but we have that in a lot of our villages, and actually, too many vehicles in too small spaces is a general problem that we have to deal with, and it comes back to the point about the balance between the reuse of some of those buildings to provide some accommodation versus leaving them as they are. And on balance, from my perspective, therefore, I would have to say I can't see a specific objection to this. It would be utilising some space. It would provide some accommodation, much needed, as we know, for a whole range of different people. And that's my point. It's really just about that fine balance. And for me, therefore, I would support the officer's recommendations on that basis.
Any further comments from the committee?
Thank you, Chair. Okay. Just, you feel backed into a corner that's going to be the end outcome. Yeah. So yes, I can't use anything else to say why we could object to it, really.
Councillor Keeple.
Shall I move that we approve it? We approve the recommendations.
Yeah. Okay. So you wish to propose it, and we have a seconder, Councillor Ware. You wish to summarise?
Thank you, Chair. It's proposed by Councillor Sally Keeble and seconded by Councillor Christine Ware that the application be approved in accordance with the case officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I see a show of hands in favour of the application? Those against? Okay, and any abstentions? Okay, so that's approved.
Two, sorry. That is approved.
Okay, so moving on to the final item, which is item 11, urgent business, and there is none. So the next meeting will be held on the 4th of June at the Forum Toaster. Thank you. That brings the meeting to a close.